Hi, welcome to another episode of Firm Foundations Podcast with your hosts CJ and Tony. So far, we've traversed human history from antiquity to antiquity, and we have not made it to modernity yet. But we've watched God deal with humanity in his sovereign ways and guide our attention through history from an overall view to a zoomed in close look at the family that would further the redemptive story. We watched Israel go down to Egypt and enter their first exile, if you would like to call it. And there we find Jacob finally reunited with his long lost son Joseph. And after 17 years of making up for the lost 22 years, he begins to set his affairs in order, getting ready to leave the mortal coil. And last week's episode, chapter 48, he had Joseph come in with his sons, and he claimed the two sons that Joseph had born to him in Egypt before his father and his brethren moved down there. Jacob claims them as his own in an attempt to both give Joseph a double portion, a double blessing in Israel, the way the first son would have gotten, even though he's second to last son. But he is Jacob's beloved son. So he's going to, and his elder brothers had disqualified themselves one way or the other. And it was clear that, at least for that time, Joseph was the leader of the family, really. Even though Jacob is the father, from very early on, God had made clear, even though nobody wanted to accept it, through dreams and visions, that Joseph would be the leader of the family. And so Jacob is honoring that. But Jacob is also a prophet, and he knows that it's going to be another son that would become the leader of the family, the leader in Israel, that God's promised line of redemption would come through another son of Jacob's. In addition to that, he sort of adopts Joseph's two sons in order to strengthen the family ties and bonds, because those sons, they grew up for a good portion of their formative early years as strangers to the family. So they were thoroughly Egyptian in many ways instead of Israelite. And Jacob, in his wisdom, looked at that and figured that that was going to be a problem. So, to protect the family unity and increase cohesion, he claims them as his own and positions them such that they and their uncles are coming up together and are made into a cohesive unit. And he, as we see time and again in the Genesis account, it's never the first or the oldest son that gets the bigger blessing, because contrary to human expectation and traditions, God has different plans. And for whatever reason, eldest sons tend to be bozos, tend to be, um, for one reason or another, they disqualify themselves early on. We don't see this necessarily in Ephraim and Menashe's situation in Joseph's first two sons, but God still has a different plan, and He's not going to follow human tradition just because. And we see Jacob reversing the blessings for the two sons, and he gives the younger son the blessing of the eldest, and the eldest he gives a lesser blessing. Both are going to be great, but not Menashe, but Ephraim is going to be the one who's going to be the leader amongst the two. That's where we left off. Now, some time has passed, and Jacob is realizing that his days are coming to an end. This is probably his last day on earth, and he wants to set his affairs in order. And one thing he has to do is pronounce blessings on his sons. So now he's going to call his sons to him. He's going to strengthen himself, gather his strength one last time, and proclaim interesting blessings on his 12 sons in their birth order.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see how those blessings come to fruition over centuries and millennia. We're going to go through a quick overview of historical events and persons that that are tied to these blessings. So,
Are we
shall
ready?
we?
Yeah, let's dig into this. I know this. I'm gonna spoil alert. Actually, you already did the spoil about Jacob's last day.
Yeah.
I find it amazing that somebody can do this knowing that they're going to die that day.
Yeah.
It's like, by the way, it's almost like watching a movie. You know, the last words are, I love you.
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that's where they got it from. I don't know.
Hollywood, despite what it would like to say and pretend, learned its best tricks from the Bible.
Exodus, we're gonna do a lot of comparison to the movie The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston.
Okay.
And the actual goings on of what's the real.
Yeah, I'll let you do that comparison because I never got big into that movie, and it was before my time, and I have a problem with classics. So,
being raised Catholic, my parents every Easter, it was on TV every Easter, the Ten Commandments. Regardless, I think it's like a 2.5, 3 hour movie.
Yeah,
and and I was like, oh, okay, I know all about the Ten Commandments. When I got wise enough or smart enough to actually read about it, I was like, this is not. It's so way off. But and that's Hollywood. It's just like The Chosen.
Mm.
It is not done in sequence because they're taking bits of each and putting them in there to make it more dramatic. All these things happened, but the way they put it in and the way they portray it is a little off. But again, even though they're supposed to be, I think it's done by Angel Studios, strictly Christian, it still has to be dramatized in order to keep attention.
Yeah, and Angel Studios isn't necessarily a Christian organization either, because owners are
Yeah,
Mormon.
Mormon.
So
Yeah, sneaky. They try to sneak the stuff in.
yeah, but
So anyway, when we get to that, we'll get to that. Here we go, chapter 49. Almost done here. And Jacob called his sons and said, "Gather together, that I may tell you what shall befall you in the last days."
mm. So before we go any
Yeah,
further,
go for it.
I mean, just for those of us who's not aware of this yet, the phrase "in the last days" is a very specific term that alludes to the Messianic era, the end of days, literally not a few days later, not a few years later, but from this point way in the future. So he is this is his last will and testimony, but it's a prophetic utterance. He is. It's not just his will. It's not just his wishes. It's not just like what he would like for somebody to do at his funeral, what
Mhm.
songs to sing, what you know, finger foods to have maybe for people, whatever. No, it's a prophetic utterance, and well, like we said in the intro, we're gonna talk about how some of these things come to fruition.
Mhm. Gather together and hear, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father. Now look at there. He he uses
Yeah,
both references of his name.
yeah,
Come together, listen. Come together, you sons of Jacob, and listen to Israel your father.
yeah.
Yeah.
It's almost as if saying, "You nudniks, you troublemakers, y'all got it honest. Y'all took it from me. I was a troublemaker myself. I was a schemer and a
Oh yeah.
deceiver, like y'all.
Mhm.
But don't listen to that past. Listen to the redeemed man, the one. Listen to the man who is a part of the covenant. Listen to the better nature." Yeah, yeah,
Israel is wiser than Jacob.
yeah,
Not I've gotten old. 137 was it?
yeah.
I
I
think.
think so.
Um, okay,
Yeah,
verse 3. Reuben, you are my firstborn, my might and the beginning of my strength, the excellency of dignity and the excellency of power. Unstable as water, you shall not excel, because you went up to your father's bed, then you defiled it. He went up to my couch.
mm,
Now, you know, so he acknowledges his firstborn being a son, and that's a big thing to have a firstborn son back in those days. Not so much now. Well, not in the Western world, doesn't really matter. But back then, you have a firstborn son, you're doing something right.
yeah,
And this is Reuben. He's the top dog. Supposed to be the top dog. Being his firstborn, he made his father proud that he was, a son. He's got his dignity because it wasn't a daughter. Blah blah blah. What do you got?
yeah,
Then he's called unstable as water.
yeah. It's the from the excellency of dignity on. It's it begins very warm and fuzzy, but from that point, it's a very thinly veiled um, chastisement,
Mm-hmm.
because the word translated as uh, dignity there is set, and it comes from the word nasa, which means to carry or to lift up, to carry away. Um, in some places, it can also mean to misuse. So yeah, your the excellency of dignity or your abundance of misuse, abundance of carrying away, abundance of uh, what in the Bible we see that word used to mean not just to lift up, to dignify, to praise, but also to um, like when somebody's kidnapped, which I mentioned already, or like in the Ten Commandments where it says, "You shall not take the Lord's name in vain." The word translated in vain there is the same word, and it means to misappropriate, to claim to be someone that you're not, to claim to be a servant of God when you're not. And he's slapping Reuben with this. It it's he's laying down the gauntlet. It's and then he says, then he went up to your father's bed. He went up to my couch, and of course he's talking to how he slept with his father's concubine. But the the picture he's portraying is you're the one that caused your brother to be lowered into the pit that he would later have to be lifted out of. You're the one that sent your brother out to be carried away, kidnapped, taken away. You're the one that tried to dethrone me by rising up to my bed and claiming my concubine as your own. You're the one that causes all of us to be misplaced. None of us, when you're around, none of us is where we should be. It's
He ruined it. Yeah, it's like you said, Jacob acknowledged the fact that he's firstborn, and that was the pride of a father. And then he goes and ruins it
yeah,
uh, because of uh,
yeah,
his own pride, and maybe even forcing himself to be above everybody and sleeping with his father's concubine, like he's a, taken over even of his father's position. And oops, of
yeah,
course there was a bigger oops than that, but uh, he he tried to do things in the wrong order of what a firstborn is supposed to do. He's
yeah,
supposed to continue to honor his father, not degrade him in the way that he did.
yeah. And I find it's so easy for us to focus on Jacob's words and to not stop and feel what Reuben is feeling when he hears these words. These are his father's last words to him. These are the words that are going to stick with him till the day he dies, after his father passes away. It must be devastating. And it reminds me of a conversation I've had recently with a friend of mine who's full of regrets and doesn't know the Lord. And um, in case there's anybody out there listening to this right now that is feeling the weight of it and is feeling the same sh- shame and defeat and hopelessness, we say that Jesus saves because he does. He does redeem. One of his names is Redeemer. He redeems us. He heals us. He restores us. No life is too far gone. No one is irredeemable, contrary to what Hillary Killington might say. If there is breath in you, then there is hope in Jesus. So, do what you will with this knowledge. Seek him. He will make himself found to you. Indeed, he is at the door of your heart, knocking. And he says, whoever opens the door and lets me in, I will come in, and we will have a meal together. Meaning we will have fellowship together. Meaning he will heal, he will restore, he will redeem. You can't change the past, but you can let God use it for good. You can let him turn it around. This ain't the Titanic.
I was thinking about this last night, or night before, whenever it was. Jesus forewarns people about your name being blotted out. And I don't think a lot of people understand that their names are in the book of life. Everybody's name that has ever been born, their name is in the book of life. And like you said, until that last breath is gone, if you know Christ, it stays in the book. If you don't, sorry, it's crossed out. And it's like you said, until you breathe your last, you've got that chance to keep your name in the book of life so that you are redeemed for his kingdom.
Yeah.
And that's a scary thought.
Yeah.
Because, and I know we've mentioned this before, I'll get straightened out later on. But if you get hit by a car and killed, there is no later on.
Yeah.
Or however a surprise death may be. If you're not right, your name is blotted out. Or like you said about the claiming yourself to be basically a Christian, but you're not. And sorry, I never knew you, because the name was not kept in there because you really was not. You were just faking it the whole time.
Yeah.
I know we just got off subject a little bit. But
I mean, it's there. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So verse 5, Simeon and Levi are brothers. Instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place. Let not my soul enter their council. Let not my honor be united to their assembly. For in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox. Cursed be their anger, for it is fierce, and their wrath, for it is cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Well, that's a lot harsher than poor Reuben got, I think.
I mean,
yeah. He laid it down on them guys. They didn't have nothing nice to say other than your brothers. That was the only nice thing he said.
But even that is a slap in the face, because when you put it together with the following, instruments of cruelty are in their dwelling place, and there's an issue there. In the translation, there's several different ways of translating it, and they could all be correct. So I'm not saying one is better than the other, but I think we should actually consider all of the translations, because by itself, one of them is just not enough. The word translated as dwelling place actually is a I'm not even going to use the Greek terminology for it. Um, it's a phrase that is used only once in the Bible, and on top of that, it comes from a unknown root, morphologically and etymologically. It's unknown, and some like Rashi use a Greek word to kind of explain it the way he understands it, and he associates it with the word for a sword. Some say it comes from another word, kur, which means to dig, as in like digging a furnace for a house back in the day to keep it warm. And so by that meaning, they say it's a dwelling place, habitation, which is obviously where these translators went with it. Um, but it's regardless of another group of scholars look at it and associate it with the word that we get the term um, covenant from. And so the idea is instruments of cruelty are their swords, or instruments of cruelty are their snip equipment, the stuff, the blades that they use to circumcise. And in light of what they did when their father is talking about in their anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they hamstrung an ox, what he's talking about is what they did to the city of Shechem when their sister Dinah was raped by um, people of that city. And they made a ruse, if you don't remember, when the father and son came to them to ask for their blessing that his son might marry their sister Dinah after having defiled her. They said, sure, but only if you and everybody in your city are circumcised. And then while they were still reeling with pain over the circumcision because they accepted it, they killed every single one of them. They didn't leave anyone alive. And what God intended as a covenant image, a symbol of their covenant, they turned into a symbol of death and destruction, of cruelty. And
They defiled it.
they defiled it. What? Yeah. And when he's saying that they are brothers, another translation, the Art Scroll translation says they're comrades. And together with the instruments of cruelty, the word translated as cruelty actually means violence. It is the word Hamas, the terrorist organization that killed over 1,000 people in Israel a couple years ago, that kicked off this huge war. Hamas, it's the same Hamas. It's violence. And what he's saying is that these guys, these two, they're brothers, but they don't bond over brotherly love and shared interests other than their shared interest for violence, their anger. Just remember what they did to Joseph and what they did to Shechem, and that's what they break bread over. Again, like you said, I mean, he has no redeeming quality for them. Not even they're not even the firstborn, so they don't even get that pass.
Mhm.
But the prophetic comes in here when he says, I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. Because later on, when um, God brings Israel out of Egypt and brings them to the promised land, and he allocates the land to them. Shimon and Levi, they don't get their own land. They get cities that are scattered throughout. Simeon's cities are scattered throughout Judah. Judah gets an oversized portion, and they get scattered in Judah. They lose all political agency. Levi gets scattered amongst all of Israel with a city here, a city there, and they lose their political um,
Well, they have no
agency.
land to call their own.
Yeah,
They're,
just the
they're
cities.
just
Yeah,
they're just in each city, and
yeah, and I,
it's we were talking about this earlier about how the Levites ended up carrying the um, lost my words here. Um,
the spiritual authority, I guess you could
thank you
say.
very much. The spiritual authority, after this, but we see throughout these centuries how the Levites had taken step like who was the leader, and his two sons were uh, defiling the temple with prostitutes, and can't think of his name right offhand. But and it's stuff like that happens.
Eli and no, was it
The
Eli?
sons of Eli?
Was it the sons of
But there's stuff like that happens throughout, and it's almost like the curse is still
Yeah,
lingering there.
yeah,
And it goes all the way down to the Pharisees that crucified Jesus.
yeah.
It's just one way or another that they continue their uh, destruction.
But I think that also speaks to the dynamic between the brothers, Simeon and Levi, too, in the sense that Levi still gets a spiritual inheritance. It he gets his tribe loses its place as a tribe
Mm-hmm.
in one sense. It's not counted as one of the 12 tribes. It's like a 13th tribe that's scattered all throughout, and they're relegated to serving in the temple. It's like they're paying penance, making penance, paying for the sins of their fathers, and making up for it in every generation by serving God. And like you said, they still bungle it up many times, but at least they have that opportunity and that responsibility. And Simeon is not even given that. It's as if Simeon was the one that instigated, and Levi was the one like, yeah, let's do it.
Uh-huh.
The leader and the follower dynamic.
Right.
So the leader is left without anything.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's the first place where we see the more prophetic nature of this come out. It's not just the father's grievance. It's God's judgment
Mm-hmm.
coming about, and this is where we first see it.
Verse 8. Okay, so Judah's got some good stuff going on here, and if you want to stop me anytime before I finish his whole blessing, feel free to do so. Judah, you are he whom your brothers shall praise. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. Your father's children shall bow down before you. Judah is a lion's whelp. From the prey, my son, you have gone up. He bows down, he lies down as a lion, and as a lion, who shall rouse him?
Hmm.
The scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet until Shiloh comes. And to him shall be the obedience of the people, binding his donkey to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. His eyes are darker than wine, and his teeth whiter than milk.
Mhm.
We have, you know, there's a lot going on.
Yeah.
When he started out, I mean, there's nothing bad that's been told to Judah by Israel. Everything is, you are top dog because
Yeah.
now you are placed as firstborn, so to speak,
Yeah.
because of verse 10, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, which we know that Jesus is from the line, the tribe of Judah.
Yeah.
He is the line of the tribe of Judah. But I mean, there's a lot more which you have were talking about earlier.
Yeah. Interesting, right? So Jacob gives Joseph a double blessing by making his two sons, Jacob's grandsons, into two tribes. He elevates them, and even though he's going to bless Joseph in a little bit,
Mm-hmm.
Joseph isn't going to be one of the tribes. Instead, his sons are going to be two tribes. So he's given him the blessing of the firstborn, half of it. He recognizes him as the leader of the family while they're in Egypt, but it's not going to stay that way. God has a plan for Judah, and even though he had a plan for Joseph in bringing him down to Egypt to make a way for the salvation of the world in his time, the salvation of the world, its eternal salvation, is going to come, like you said, through the Messianic line, through Judah. So Judah is going to be the one who rules in Israel. Judah, a family from the family of Judah, is going to rise up. And this is made clear here because, like you said, the scepter shall not depart from Judah, nor a lawgiver from between his feet. And as you mentioned, obviously, the scepter is associated with ruling, with kingship, and it's a direct reference to the Messianic line. But the lawgiver, we usually read that in English, and well, who gives the law? The king does.
Mm-hmm.
But here, another way to translate that word is scholar. So, and specifically biblical scholar. So it's not talking about the king necessarily, because the king in Israel doesn't give the law, by the way. God gives the law. The king just
Enforces yeah.
manages the day-to-day operations. So here, as far as lawgiver, it's talking about the scholars, Torah scholars, the ones who studied the law of God, and the sages see the fulfillment of that the same way the fulfillment of the scepter not being okay. Going back to the scepter, actually, let's go back there real quick. I'm sorry if I'm confusing anybody, but the scepter, one could say, well, okay, so King David is from the tribe of Judah, and with him the kingdom began. He's the scepter was with him, and then it continued with his descendants until the Babylonian exile. Well, what happens after that? Because there's no king. Well, during the exile, the Babylonians maintained Israel or Judah as a nation, and the Ottomans did the same thing. They appointed leaders over the nations that they conquered, and that person was, for better or worse, kind of like the king of that nation under the emperor. And the Romans did the same thing, right? Because Rome had its emperor, but King Herod was king of
Mm-hmm.
Israel. Um, and during the Babylonian exile, these leaders were called the exilarchs, the arch, the arch, the ones over the exiles, and they were from the tribe of Judah. They were from the um, line of David. They were, if they hadn't been in exile, they would have been the kings themselves. So that promise continued. Um, and as far as the lawgiver, the Torah scholars, the fulfillment of this promise is seen in the house of Hillel. And who is Hillel? Hillel was one of the chief justices of the Sanhedrin, um, right before the birth of Jesus, and he was the founder of one of the main schools of, or rabbinical schools, one of the main schools of Jewish thought and legal interpretations. Another one was his partner, because at the time the heads of the Sanhedrin would serve in pairs. Um, and he has two partners. One later on, oddly enough, either his partner or his partner's son later on ends up as one of the leaders and a prophet in the church in Antioch. And we'll get there. So there's a connection to the New Testament, which is several connections. Another connection is, well, Hillel's grandson was in the Sanhedrin during Jesus' time. You might have heard of him. His name's Gamaliel, or Gamliel if you're Hebrew, and the he was the one that argued on behalf of the um, disciples. Was it John and Peter, when they were brought before the
Yeah,
Sanhedrin?
told
And
not to use the name of Jesus anymore.
yeah, and after they left, he said, "Look, all these we've had a bunch of false messiahs, and after they were dealt with, their disciples scattered and nobody remembers them. But if this one truly is the Messiah, then you will be finding yourselves kicking against God."
Mm-hmm.
That was him, the grandson of Hillel, and he's the one who trained and equipped Paul of Tarsus. Maybe you've heard of him. So technically, Paul of Tarsus, even
Well,
though
Saul would
Saul,
be his name, actually, with connected with him,
yeah, but
and then he
I
converts.
well, I wouldn't use the term
Like,
convert, but he gives his life to Christ,
mm-hmm.
and um, he becomes the most famous follower of Christ.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Again, he's not a descendant of Hillel, but he is from the school of Hillel. And till the day he died, he continued saying, "I am a Pharisee. I am," and so he would be technically part of the fulfillment of this um, prophecy here. But then it gets even more interesting, right? It says, "Until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people." So right away we understand that Shiloh is a person. But what does Shiloh even mean? What's going on here? Because Shiloh is just a transliteration of the Hebrew word Shiloh, because there's really no translation for it. The root word comes from the word that means tranquil, and it's the name of a place. So some, uh, like Rashbam, think that, oh, what it means is until Judah comes to Shiloh, but that doesn't make sense because Judah, well, once they conquer the land, Judah has his own place. And Shiloh is a city inside of Ephraim's territory. And it's the place where the tabernacle is set up until King Solomon builds the temple. So if the fulfillment of the scepter not departing from Judah begins with King David and Solomon, excuse me, it doesn't make sense that the kingship would rest with Judah until they go up to Shiloh, because this whole time until the tabernacle comes down, they've been going to Shiloh. But this is only the beginning of the Davidic reign, the promise being kept regarding that, to Judah. So that can't be it. So Rashbam's translation that until Judah comes to Shiloh doesn't make sense. It's invalid. Um, Another idea is that it comes from the word that means tribute to him. But why should kingship remain with him until the tribute comes to him? It doesn't make sense. Again, now, Rashi and Onkelos, they look at it and say that, oh, it's because it comes from the meaning comes from Sheloh, the one whom it belongs to. So the scepter shall not depart from Judah until the one who the scepter, who the rulership, the kingship actually belongs to comes. Therefore, it is the name or one of the names of the Messiah, son of David. And of course, Christian commentary follows that interpretation and sees it as a messianic prophecy, and it's the only one that actually makes sense, right? So Judah and the tribe of Judah, and specifically the family of David, they're the caretakers of the kingship, of the authority, until the Messiah comes. And even the Messiah is the son of David, as in a descendant of David. There's more to him than meets the eye, which we've alluded to many times, and we'll get there. But then the following verses, with 11, binding his donkey to the vine, and his donkey's colt to the choice vine. He washed his garments in wine, and his clothes in the blood of grapes. You made a
Yeah, it's the you know if you've read the Gospels, uh, Jesus tells his two disciples to go into Jerusalem. You'll find a colt, and you'll find a donkey and its colt, and you tell the man that he has need of him, and they bring him to him, uh, and they put their clothes on the colt for Jesus to ride in to Jerusalem on a colt, which you had stated earlier that when a king comes in on a colt, it's for peace purposes.
yeah
And then about the washing of the garments, uh, you know, does that reference to washing of our sins with the blood? Because and here they call it blood of grapes.
yeah
But could it be a reference to his blood washing the sins because it's
yeah. I mean, and for the Jewish viewers out there that might be pulling their hair out because
What are you
we dare
saying?
say Jesus, let me let me appeal to Abarbanel and Sforno, who look at verse 11 in conjunction with verse 10 and goes, the Messiah will be a man of peace, but he's also a conquering king. So how does he conquer? How does he wage war if he's a man of peace? Because, like you said, he's riding a donkey. When a king rides a donkey, it's a peacetime mission. He's leisurely strolling through. But when he rides a horse, he's going out to war. So how do we make it make sense? And Abarmanel and Sforno look at this and say, well, because the Lord will fight his battles on his behalf. So the Messiah will be victorious. He's the conquering king by the power of God. If you don't believe me, get your own Art Scroll Chumash, Stone Edition, and read the commentary. Not my words. And like you said, the last week, Jesus rides into town on a donkey, on a colt of the donkey. And as you mentioned earlier, Jesus in John 15 says he is the true vine. He is the vine that the colt is tied to.
Mm-hmm. The choice vine.
Yeah.
And what it says, yeah.
You don't tie an animal to a vine. The animal will just run with it, just rip it right out. Unless the vine is the vine that can't be uprooted. The vine planted by God himself, which the Messiah is. But it reminds me of the night that Christ was, the talk about his enemies, or his wars being fought by God himself, or God the Father himself, as we would say. The night that he was given over, that he was betrayed, he went peaceably, even though they came at him with an army of men. Even though his disciples wanted to fight back, he said no. When one of them struck one of the slaves and cut the ear off, he healed the slave and restored the ear. He was a man of peace. And when he was crucified and died and laid in the tomb, and the whole world was laughing at him, God was fighting his battle and rose him from the dead. And Paul, disciple of Gamaliel, the grandson of Hillel, the fulfillment of one of God's promises, looks at this in his letter to the 1 Corinthians chapter 15, verse 55, and quoting the Old Testament, quoting the Hebrew prophets, says, O death, where is your sting? O grave, where is your victory? You don't got it because God fought his battles and the Messiah has overcome. The man of peace. And like you said, his garments being washed in wine, clothes in the blood of grapes. It's serving. It has multi-tiered meaning. One meaning is like the very off the cuff, like first thing you notice is, it's like you saying, "Oh, you wash your clothes in water? That's cute. I wash mine in wine." Because there's so much of an abundance. We are so blessed God has blessed us so much. Wine is a symbol of blessing. But it's also in the Jewish scriptures a sign. It's also a sign, a symbol of judgment, and from that we get, and the fact that it clearly says the blood of grapes, putting those two together, we see that it's talking about God's judgment on humanity's sins and the blood that he spilled on the cross to bear those, to bear the cost of that sin. As the prophet Isaiah says, the chastisement of our transgression was put upon him, and by his stripes we are healed.
Um, I don't know if you want to call it clarifying, but you talking about the guys pulling their hair out because of what I said. Because they say you have the Messiah that's coming in peace,
Yeah.
and then another Messiah coming in war.
Oh, yeah.
But it's got to be understood, Jesus didn't come to, he came to conquer, but he wasn't conquering earthly, it wasn't an earthly battle.
Not yet.
It was a conquering of death and the grave.
Yeah.
That's what that's what his mission was.
Yeah.
And he did that. Yes, he's coming back on a white horse for battle.
Yeah.
But it's not two different messiahs. This is one Messiah.
Yeah. And we'll get to that.
Oh, I know.
We'll get to that again when we read Joseph's blessing, because you're alluding to something very crucial there. There's a idea in Judaism that there's two messiahs: Messiah son of David and Messiah son of Joseph, and we're going to get to that in a second. But we believe they're one and the same.
Yes.
Yeah.
You want to say something about the eyes being darker than wine and the teeth whiter than milk?
Actually, the Bible show guys comment on that, and I'm just going to echo them. Actually, that's what we were talking about earlier.
Mm-hmm.
As as you grow old, your eyes grow dim. They get a little hazy, a little milky. Cataracts might begin to form. So they appear lighter in color. And he's saying, nah. In his old age, his eyes are still darker than wine. They're still full of vitality. They're still youthful. They still have vision. And as you grow old, your teeth rot. You lose your teeth. You start gumming your steak, and it's a chewy experience, a bit of a task. But no, his teeth are still whiter than milk. They're still full and strong and healthy. Talking about not only Judah but also the Messiah being full of youth and vitality, uh, and not growing old and weak and weary.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
All right. The fifth son, Zebulun, shall dwell by the haven of the sea. He shall become a haven for ships, and his border shall adjoin Sidon. Didn't have a lot to say to him, did he?
Nope.
uh,
We mentioned earlier, I don't know, I think it was off camera, that there's four sons that get long, well, 4 or 5 sons that get long blessings or chastisement.
Yeah, chastisement.
But and it so happens that it's the ones that screwed up, the one that was redeemed, and the one that was thought dead that was brought back to life. And The rest are just like, you know,
Fill-ins.
y'all didn't screw up too bad, and y'all didn't do anything amazing. So, you know, here's your blessing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna chew y'all out, but
But at the
I,
same time, they don't get a great blessing or much of a blessing, so to speak.
yeah,
Uh,
because
but I guess not being cursed is great.
yeah, I mean, they're all gonna play their part in Israel's history. They're all
Mm-hmm.
gonna play their part in God's redemptive story, but they're not center stage. They're not the ones whom the Messiah will come through. They're not the ones who almost tore the family apart. They're not the ones who caused all the trouble. So,
Yeah.
it's commensurate with their role.
Verse 14, number 6. Issachar is a strong donkey, lying down between two burdens. He saw that rest was good and that the land was pleasant. He bowed his shoulders to bear a burden and became a band of slaves.
Hmm. Again, depends on how you translate it, right? Um, you got anything?
Uh, I, became a band of slaves. Is this referring to the fact that he's just going to be slaves to his brother's tribes in
Well,
a sense? Or
it the sages, when they looked at this, they looked at the fact that he's lying down between two burdens, and they saw that as, the burdens of normal agrarian lifestyle, farm work, but also spiritual work. You know, they saw that approximately, I don't know, 200 of the leaders of the Sanhedrin came from Issachar, and they're like, oh, okay, so studying the Word of God, studying the law of God was important to Issachar, and he became a servant to his brethren in that sense by becoming a spiritual anchor.
mm-hmm.
Um, so it's not slave, but it's servant. Um,
Okay, uh, so 200 people out of the Issachar uh, tribe
yeah.
became part of the Sanhedrin. Uh, so they're kind of coupled with Levi.
Well, the Sanhedrin isn't just a Levitical institution.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's a judicial institution made up of scholars. So some scholars would have been Levitical, priestly. We know that. We know some of them were Sadducees
Mm-hmm.
during the time of Jesus. Um, some of them were lay people that just, they were not from the priestly family. They were not from the tribe of Levi, but they were scholars of the Word of God. And Issachar contributed more than his fair share of scholars over time. Yeah. And they actually get this number 200 actually from, oh, I'm trying to remember where. Was it Joshua or Judges or Chronicle? One of those. It actually, there's an event and it mentions the 200 there. So,
Hmm.
um,
Okay. Let's see, 4, 5, 6, 7. Number 7, Dan shall judge his people as one of the tribes of Israel. Dan shall be a serpent by the way, a viper by the path that bites the horse's heels, so that its riders fall backwards. You had mentioned earlier that Samson
Yeah.
was one of the judges that came from Dan.
Yeah. Let's read 18 too,
Oh,
since it
I'm
goes
sorry.
together.
I missed that one. I have waited for your salvation, O Lord.
It because it's interesting and it seems out of place, right?
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like you said, um, so Dan, the name itself means judgment, and he's doing a word play, but also using it, as a prophetic meaning to say you were supposed to be a judge among your people. You were supposed to be elevated and in a leadership position. But again, this prophecy is multi-layered. On one hand, it's that you're a viper. When we look at Dan's history later on, um, when they're taking the land, they start taking the land that was allotted to them in the south, but they run into some trouble. They can't conquer all of the native tribes there. So they're like, do you mind if we get some up north too? And God gives them permission, and they take over Lachish, and name it Dan, also. So they have two separate uh, non-contiguous territories. The thing with the north, though, is that becomes the main center for Dan, and it's just west of a place known as Bashan, as in during Abraham's time, Og, king of Bashan, and the five kings that went to war and all that good stuff. They were a thoroughly pagan nation, a thoroughly idolatrous nation, and their idolatry seeps into Dan. Later on, when Israel breaks away from Judah, they set up two cultic centers so that people don't go to Judah to worship in Jerusalem. And they set up one of these places is in Dan. And guess what the idol is? Calves. Just like the calves, golden calf that Aaron made, just like the calves that Bashan worshipped. The yeah, the fat bulls of Bashan. Um, when we go to Psalms, we're going to see that again, and it's especially in the Messianic uh, Psalm 22, it's made clear. But so Dan is a viper in the sense that instead of being a godly judge, it introduces and becomes the cultic center of idol worship. But it also it's also clearly about its military style, and as a tribe, they would fight by themselves, being up north or being down south, without much support from anybody else, and they would employ um, what we would call guerrilla warfare tactics,
Mm-hmm.
like a snake: strike, disappear, strike, disappear. But as you said, Samson is also from this tribe, and he fought a guerrilla style warfare. Um, and that's where verse 18 comes in, because Jacob sees this in his spirit, and he sees the different layers of this prophecy, of this meaning, and he's not allowed to say it out loud. He's not allowed to say it plainly. For whatever reason, the Lord doesn't allow him to. And in distress, he cries out, Lord, I've waited for your salvation. Deliver me from this. Like, let me not see this. Please let this not be the case. But it also echoes the words of Samson in his last moments as he's praying to God to give him strength one last time to bring the temple down on the Philistines and um, once again deliver his people from the tyranny of the Philistines. So yeah, it's
All right. Well, let's see. I'm going to read these next three since they're just short ones here. Number 8, Gad, a troop shall tramp upon him, but he shall triumph at last. Bread from Asher shall be rich, and he shall yield royal dainties. Number 10, Naphtali is a deer let loose. He uses beautiful words.
okay.
I mean, this is like, I've just got one thing to say to you, to you three.
Yeah.
This is for you. It's,
Yeah. There's really not much except for Naphtali. Again, it's weird. All he is, he uses beautiful words. What kind of a blessing is that?
mm-hmm.
Until we realize that one of the judges before kings arise is Deborah, and she's a Naphthalite, and she's not only a judge, but she's also a prophetess, and um, we see her leading people in worship, singing songs, and she had to be a wordsmith as a prophet and a um, uh, judge. But that's not it, because there's more. Kind of think of that ShamWow guy. Um, but that's not all. There's more. A very famous guy showed up in the region of Galilee uh, about 1,500 years after this, about 2,000 years ago from our time. Very famous guy. He's born in Judah. He's from the tribe of Judah. He's actually from the house of David. But he grew up in Zebulun, in a town you might have heard it, Nazareth, just on the other side of the border from Naphtali. And, he was a big prophet, but also, he's also known as the son of David. And his ministry was one of the characteristics that everybody noted was the beautiful words that came out of his mouth and the graceful words that came out of his mouth. And his ministry mostly centered around Naphtali, the region of Galilee. Um, of course, we're talking about Jesus here.
Oh, is that? I wasn't sure.
Right? Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I got all those names right.
But then on top of that, like that, he's the major one, right?
Mm-hmm.
But there's three other major rabbis that centered around this region. One is Rabbi Akiva, which they all three play a major role in the formation of modern Judaism. But Rabbi Akiva is probably the most influential one. Then there's Ben Zakkai and uh, uh, Ben Zakkai and trying to think of the other one now. Either way, his name's escaping me. Forgive me. But together, the three form the basis of modern Judaism, really. Even with Hillel being the major interpretation of the law that carries on till today, which I don't think we mentioned that on camera. But as we were talking about, when Jesus was arguing with the Pharisees, with the exception of one time, their arguments point to the fact that the Pharisees that he was arguing with were from the school of Shammai, which was one of the other guys that was a pair with Hillel, and Jesus's argument followed the school of Hillel. And I'm not saying that Jesus needed to validate his arguments, but rather that Jesus was validating Hillel's argument. So I find that interesting that today's Judaism follows mostly Hillel's interpretation, even though they like to reject Jesus. But hey, that's neither here nor there. But of course, then the one of these other three rabbis is attributed with the Zohar, which is the foundational text for Jewish mysticism, Kabbalah. But they all came from this region, or all ministered in this region, and really does show that God's promises, His prophetic utterances, are not void. It really is a region known for the use of beautiful words.
Number 11, Joseph. This is a big one.
Yeah.
Joseph, if I can say his name right, Joseph is a fruitful bough by a well. His branches run over the wall. The archers have bitterly grieved him, shot at him, and hated him. But his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From there is the shepherd and the stone of Israel. By the God of your father who will help you, and by the Almighty who will bless you with blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies beneath, blessings of the breast and of the womb, the blessings of your father have excelled the blessings of my ancestors, up to the utmost bound of everlasting hills. They shall be on the head of Joseph, and on the crown of the head of him who was separate from his brothers. Woo! Bless, 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 bless.
Bless.
And the thing is not only does he have this to say to Joseph in front of his brothers, but his sons also had a blessing that connect with this.
Yeah.
It's like you said, double portion and everything. So that must have really rubbed really raw, rubbed the salt in the wounds there, so to speak, of some of his brothers that, especially the first three that were the biggest troublemakers. I don't know about how the other brothers may have looked at it. It's like, well, he did save our lives. Maybe.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's just one thing after another. That, I mean, his suffering that he went through those 11 years in prison. It's 11 years. It may have took a while, but God turned it into a blessing.
Yeah.
And we hear people talk about what Satan meant for bad or worse, God turns it to good.
Yeah.
And people look at that and it's like it's supposed to be automatic. Okay, I've suffered this. Okay, where's the blessing? Sometimes it takes 11 years in prison.
Yeah.
And because we're impatient, we're the microwave generation.
Yeah.
that it's got to be done now because I can't wait.
Yeah.
Uh,
And we don't want to pay. It's said you pay for what you get and you get what you pay for.
mm-hmm.
And we don't like to pay for anything. We don't want to have to struggle. But nothing worth anything is achieved without a struggle. And nothing achieved without a struggle is worth anything. Um, yeah. But what sticks out to me is verse 24
Mm-hmm.
at the end.
Yeah.
Um, but his bow remained in strength, and the arms of his hands were made strong by the hands of the mighty God of Jacob. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. And,
And it's capitalized,
yeah.
meaning
Well, again, Hebrew doesn't have capitals and
right.
lower
But
uppercase,
it's to help
lowercase.
for us to understand the
Yeah,
meaning of it.
because now different translations might translate it differently, but if you look at the Hebrew, this is the most authentic translation. Let's put it like that. From there is the shepherd, the stone of Israel. Now wait 1 second. If the Messiah is supposed to come from David, who comes from Judah, what does Joseph have to do with anything?
Mm-hmm.
How is he the shepherd, the stone of Israel? Because Jesus appropriates that title for himself, right? The chief
Capstone, chief
cornerstone.
cornerstone.
Um, and we know that from the other writings and prophets of Israel, we know that that is a messianic title. So, yes. But how is it that son of David, son of Joseph, both be Messiah? And, the rabbis look at this and say, okay, so there's the son of Joseph and the son of David. And that lines up with the um, other passages related to the Messiah. There's passages that describe him as the conquering king, the one who delivers Israel from her enemies and brings back, gathers in the exiles, rebuilds the temple, and ushers in a utopian era.
Mm-hmm.
But then there's also in Isaiah, like 53 and elsewhere, the suffering servant, the one who dies for the sins of the people and purchases their healing by his stripes. And how can the Messiah both die and be the conquering king at the same time? So the rabbis look at this and they say, oh, there's two Messiahs. Messiah son of David, Messiah son of David, Joseph are separate. Son of Joseph, well, Joseph was the suffering servant of God, so Messiah son of Joseph must be the Messiah who's the suffering servant who dies for the sins of Israel. And again, don't take my word for it. Let's see. Here we go. You can, if it's out of print, but if you can find it, it's called "What the Rabbanim Say About Moshiach" by Douglas Pyle. Find it. All he does is quotes uh, different sages, quotes the Talmud, and you know figure out what they say about the Messiah. Um, and yes, the Messiah it was supposed to die for the sins. Um, that's not a Christian invention. That Paul didn't invent that. That was squarely a Jewish teaching that later on got rejected afterwards because they were uncomfortable with how close that resembles Jesus. And there lays the problem. But then they said, oh, the other one, the one who's the conquering king, well, he comes from the kingly line from David. So, that must be the son of David, the conquering king. But, if you would allow me, even the Talmud says that the Messiah could be any righteous Jew, living or dead. Meaning that a righteous man who died could come back as the Messiah. Not my words. Go search it yourself. If you're a rabbinical Jew, if you're an Orthodox Jew watching this right now, if you're a Hasid, God bless you. I love you. Go research it for yourself. If the Messiah, son of Joseph, was to suffer and die for the sins of the people, who would be more righteous than him to come back as Messiah, son of David, and rule? And you know what? I don't believe in reincarnation, but many Orthodox Jews do. And if you're one of those, that could easily explain son of Joseph being the son of David at the same time. I'm not going there. It's not something that I believe. But we know that Joseph's descendants married into Judah's descendants, and David's own ancestors and descendants had spouses that came from Ephraim and Manasseh. Therefore, the son of David is also the son of Joseph. They are the one and same person. It's not two separate people. That is the big mystery that the sages of Israel could not wrap their heads around, regardless of their immense wisdom and genius. Therefore, when we say Jesus is the Messiah, when I say that, I mean that he came as the son of Joseph. He came, he fulfilled every single prophecy about the suffering servant. And I fully expect that he will come again to fulfill all the prophecies regarding the son of David. That's why he is the hope of Israel, even though Israel has been mysteriously blinded to it.
How long are they going to wait for their Messiah? It took 4,000 years to get everything lined up, and they rejected him out of jealousy. And
there's a husband and wife duo out of Israel. They're American Jews that immigrated to Israel. And they sing beautiful voice, especially the wife. Oh, so beautiful voice. And they are so cute of a couple together. They're just, I love them. But they do not believe in Jesus. They are Orthodox Jewish. And one of their songs is called Mamtinim, I Wait. And it's literally about how, everywhere you look in the world today, it's just death and destruction and hopelessness, and righteousness and justice is not found because Cain rules. Cain, as in Cain and Abel, he rules. Death rules. The god of this age, we're told, is Satan himself, death himself. And they say, Nevertheless, I wait.
But is it possible for a Jewish person to trace his ancestry back to David now?
Um, there are some that do, especially major rabbinical dynasties like the Lubavitch dynasty, and there are others. But the problem is that, especially after the exile, history has not been kind.
Mm-hmm.
And official, scholarly, trustworthy genealogies
Yeah,
have not actually been kept
that's
in a trusted facility, let's
right.
say. So
Word of mouth.
that's one of the
That's
things that is expected of the Messiah when he comes back, to say, hey, you're from this tribe, you're from this tribe, you're from this
mm-hmm.
family, because especially since, Israel was scattered to the winds, who knows, they did not keep up with their genealogies whatsoever. He's supposed to come and say, hey, you are a Levite, you're a Cohen, a priest. You say you're a Cohen, but not really, because you're impure, because there's all these forbidden marriages in your lineage, so you're nullified, this and that, to set up proper worship in the temple again. Um, and I actually believe that that will be the case. The temple will be rebuilt, worship will return. There will be a hiatus, thanks to the one who shall not be named, and then the Messiah will come and, like you said, riding his right horse into battle, and he will set up, because he will reign 1,000 years on earth.
Mm-hmm.
So there will be, the temple will be cleansed, it will be returned to worship, and all those pesky little details have to get ironed out. And who better to do it than the Messiah himself? But yeah.
Ready for number 12?
Yeah.
Verse 27. Benjamin is a ravenous wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil.
Hmm.
And you're going to have to explain that one. Uh,
Yeah. So, I mean, again, another one of the small ones. It looks out of place because it doesn't really fit with the others, except for maybe uh, Dan. But he's a ravenous wolf. In the morning he shall devour the prey, and at night he shall divide the spoil. Well, when the sages looked at this, they said, well, who do we know that came from Benjamin? Ah, the first most prominent one was King Saul, and he was a ravenous wolf. He defeated several enemies of Israel, and that devoured the prey. But then there's and they looked at this, and it says, oh, there's morning, and then there's at night. Well, if morning is the beginning of the day, beginning of the kingdom, okay, that makes King Saul the
mm-hmm.
first one. And at night, that's when everything's ended. That's a time of darkness and mourning. That's, exile. What happened? What famous event happened during the Babylonian exile? Mordecai and Esther, God raised them up. They were from the tribe of Benjamin, and they saved, especially Esther, through her faith and obedience and God's calling and his favor, saved Israel from destruction in their day. And we commemorate Purim for that reason. There's a whole feast that commemorates that in a book of the Bible. And they say, okay, that is the fulfillment of that. Because, for those who don't remember, maybe a enemy of Israel named Haman weaseled his way in and got the king to sign a decree to murder all the Jews. Hitler wasn't the first one, not even close. But then the king found out, hey, his wife is a Jew, and so she finds favor in his eyes, and they sign. He signs the decree that allowed the Jews to strike preemptively against those who would try to murder them, and as a result, untold thousands convert to Judaism, and Israel, well, gets rid of her enemies, and they live happily ever after. Maybe there's
for
some
a while.
For a while. There's something for Disney there. But what happens with Haman is he is hung on the gallows that he prepared to hang Mordecai on, and along with his family, and everything he owned was given to Mordecai, who had previously saved the king's life also. So a double blessing there, and so they divided the spoil. So it's a very literal fulfillment of this prophecy.
Well, I will finish this out here. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and this is what their father spoke to them. And he blessed them, he blessed each one according to his own blessing. Then he charged them and said to them, I am to be gathered to my people. Bury me with my fathers in the cave that is in the field of Ephron the Hittite, in the cave that is in the field of Machpelah, which is before Mamre in the land of Canaan, which Abraham bought with the field of Ephron the Hittite as a possession for a burial place. There they buried Abraham and Sarah his wife. There they buried Isaac and Rebekah his wife, and there I buried Leah. The field and the cave that is where that were purchased from the sons of Heth. And when Jacob had finished commanding his sons, he drew up his feet into the bed and breathed his last and was gathered to his people. Drew up his feet. It's like, okay, feet are cold.
I gotta lay that back down. Yeah.
Like I said earlier, it's amazing that this guy knew that he was fixing to pass on, and he's able to speak all these words to his sons, including his burial desires, which we're going to see in chapter 50. What goes on with that, this is what you basically tell him. This is what you're going to do. I want to be buried with my fathers. Back in Canaan, where Abraham bought the land in the first place, to make a burial place for generations to come. Yeah.
Cookies
Poor
out
Cookies
there.
wanting back in.
But yeah, I mean,
I think it would be kind of fun to know the day that you're going to die and just say everything that you wanted to say.
Yeah, I mean, even if I don't know the exact date, we should be also blessed that we die without any major sickness, in possession of our full faculties, and able to say our goodbyes in a coherent manner. May it be His will that none of us suffer Alzheimer's or Parkinson's or um, anything like that, and uh, we don't die of sickness but of old age. Um,
He seemed to be in pretty good health, so to speak. I mean, never did
um,
say anything about him suffering any kind of ailment, really.
no,
So, and being 137 years old,
yeah,
uh, he's one of the last to live that long.
I mean, yeah, one of the last in the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
But just the other day, I was listening to something, and they were talking. I can't remember the details, but somebody in Europe had lived till he was 150, not too long ago. And a couple months ago, I watched a video of a rabbi was visiting a synagogue in Russia, one that had been shut down and you know left in ruins, and it had been finally restored, and people had returned. And he walks in, and there's this old man reading the Psalms, praying through the Psalms, and looking at him, I thought he was maybe 60s, maybe 70s, looked healthy as an ox. And he asked him, "So how old are you?" He says, 118. And his wife that passed away the previous year, 117. They're amongst us, y'all. The walkers are amongst us. But and we know people in Okinawa tend to live over 100. Um, again, going on a tangent because people like to make fun of the long lifespans in the early chapters of the Bible. But even today, when we look around, they're there. Um, there was one in China, and no, it's not documented perfectly, and it's not, you know, proven by science. But in the 70s, a guy died. When he died, they researched his history, and he had served as an advisor, as a general under I don't know how many emperors, and then survived through Mao and the rest. He was 250 something years old. Again, don't know if it's factual, but that's the story. And, well, I don't have the proof to prove otherwise, so I'll take it.
So his birth certificate was etched in stone. Tink, tink,
Pretty
tink,
much.
tink.
But yeah, there was a record of the man that actually went that far back.
Mm-hmm.
They think it's the same guy,
Hmm.
not different guys that just so happen to have the same name, happen to grow up in the same village, and whatever. But yeah, Jacob is an old man, and we should be so blessed. But regardless of what the Lord has in store for us on this side of eternity, we know that by His grace, we have a hope that cannot be um, stolen, a treasure that cannot be eaten away or inflated away. Um, I'm too young to talk like this, but I'm looking forward to it. Um, until then, see you next week. Until then, God bless you and keep you. May He make His face shine upon you and give you peace.